I kind of want to go a few places. Let's go to the New Testament. I want you to go over with me to James chapter 2. We know that Abraham, he was a great man of faith. And but there's so much that we can learn from this brother, from this man. You know, he is our father. You know, to us that's been grafted into this, the Bible tells us that through faith in Messiah that he's our father, is he not?
Yes.
So we are his children. And I just think we can learn so much from him as we read and kind of study the Word. I was looking at James chapter 2, and I want you to read with me as I go over 14. I think I'm going to go through 14 through 24. It says, "What doeth it profit, my brethren, though a man say he hath faith and he have not works? Can faith save him, or can it make him alive, or can it sustain?" Is basically what it's saying here. "If a brother or sister be naked and destitute of daily food, and one of you say unto them, Depart in peace, be ye warmed and filled, notwithstanding you give them not those things which are needful to the body, what doth it profit? Even so faith, if it hath not works, is dead, being alone. Yea, a man may say, Thou hast faith, and I have works. Show me thy faith without thy works, and I will show thee my faith by my works. Thou believest that there is one God, thou doest well. The devils also believe and tremble. But wilt thou know, O vain man, that faith without works is dead? Was not Abraham our father justified by works when he had offered Isaac his son upon the altar? Seest how thou faith wrought with his works, and by works was faith made perfect. And the scripture was fulfilled, which saith, Abraham believed God, and it was imputed unto him for righteousness, and he was called the friend of God." I want you to think about that. Abraham was called the friend of God. We know that it says here that in the scripture was fulfilled, which saith Abraham believed God. And of course that comes from Isaiah 41. And in Isaiah 41, what talks about Abraham's being God's friend, it's actually it's Yah actually assuring Israel of his help, that he would be with them, just as we have that assurance also that he will be with us, as he was with Abraham. But he talks about how that Abraham was his friend. And it's my understanding that when you talk about covenant, them that are in covenant, they're friends, are they not? We'll kind of get into that a little bit more here. But Abraham was called the friend of God. I want you to think about that. Do you know why that Abraham was called the friend of God? He definitely was in covenant with him. Have you ever thought about why he was called the friend of God? Have you ever needed a friend or wanted a friend and they were there for you?
A sure thing.
Yes. Yes. Whenever Yahweh would call upon Abraham, would he not say, Here am I?
Yeah.
And it was the same way that when Abraham called upon Yahweh, he was there also for him, was he not? Mm-hmm. Isn't that what friends do? They're there for one another.
Yeah.
And I believe that that's why that he was called his friend. Because whenever he spoke to Abraham, it was always, Yeah, Lord, here am I. But there was times, though, that Abraham, his faith kind of wavered a little bit. We'll kind of get into that. But I think, when I think about Abraham, I think about myself, and I know we've all been there. Isn't times our faith wavers? Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Most definitely that it does. But still, Abraham was a great man of faith. He truly was. And we know that he believed promises of God. Before he ever saw promises fulfilled, he believed God. He believed. So we know that he was a great man of faith. But anyways, it goes on in 24. Ye see that how that by works a man is justified, and not by faith only. Now we know that Abraham did believe, and it was counted as righteousness, and it takes us believing in the Messiah. It's not our works that save us, but when we do believe, what is this actually telling us here? What's James telling us? That if we truly have faith, what are we going to do?
Works.
we're going to have works,
We're gonna
are we
move.
not?
We're going to
That's
do
right.
what he
Take an action.
We're
tells
going
us
to
to
do
do. Yeah.
what we truly believe. And this is what Abraham did. Abraham walked out his faith.
Right.
He walked it out, as we should also walk out our faith. Okay, I want you to go also with me over to John 8. I just kind of wanted to kind of look over some scriptures here in the New Testament about Abraham. This is where the Messiah was speaking to the Jews, to the Pharisees. Who knows that when he's talking to the Jews here, he's actually talking to the Pharisees.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
He's talking to the Pharisees. And he had come and he was telling them that he is the light of the world, and we know that he was teaching them, and he was having this conversation with them. And in verse 39, he says, he's going on, he's talking to them. I think I'd probably go maybe before that. Maybe I'll go up to verse 31. It says, "And Yeshua, to those Jews or those Pharisees which believed on him, if you continue in my word, then are you my disciples indeed, and ye shall know the truth, and the truth shall make you free. They answered him, We are Abraham's seed, and were never in bondage to any man. How sayest thou, ye shall be made free? And Yeshua answered them, saying, Very verily I say unto you, whosoever committeth sin is the servant of sin. And the servant abideth not in the house forever, but the Son abideth ever. If the Son therefore shall make you free, you shall be free indeed. I know that you are Abraham's seed." They claim to be Abraham's children. They claim to be his seed. And he said, Yeshua said, "I know that you're Abraham's seed, but you seek to kill me because my word hath no place in you. I speak that which I have seen with my father, and you do that which ye have seen with your father." He told them their father was the devil. I want you to think about that. He was pretty straight with these people, wasn't he?
Could you read that again, verse 38?
He said, "I speak that which I have seen with my father, and you do that which ye have seen with your father."
Mine says something a little bit different.
What's yours say?
I speak what I have seen with my father, and you do what you heard from your father.
And they definitely did.
Mm-hmm.
They definitely did. Then he answered and said unto him, Abraham is our father. And Yeshua saith unto them, If ye were Abraham's children, ye would do the works of Abraham.
Right.
But now ye seek to kill me, a man that hath told you the truth, which I have heard of God. This did not Abraham. Abraham didn't do this. You seek to kill me because I tell you the truth. If you truly were children of Abraham, you would do what Abraham did. Okay, let's go on over now to Hebrews chapter 11. Let's start at 8. It says, By faith Abraham, when he was called to go out into a place which he should after receive for inheritance, obeyed, and he went out, not knowing whither he went. By faith he sojourned in the land of promise, as in a strange country, dwelling in tabernacles with Isaac and Jacob, the heirs with him of the same promise. For he looked for a city which hath foundations, whose builder and maker is God. Through faith also Sarah herself received strength to conceive seed, and was delivered of a child when she was past age, because she judged him faithful who had promised. Therefore spring there even of one, and him as good as dead, so many as the stars of the sky in multitude, and as the sand which is by the seashore innumerable. These all died in faith, not having received the promises, but having seen them afar off, and were persuaded of them, and embraced them, and confessed that they were strangers and pilgrims on the earth. Jump down to 17. By faith Abraham, when he was tried, offered up Isaac, and he that hath received the promises offered up his only begotten son. So we see again that Abraham truly was a man of faith, was he not? One more thing, I want you to go with me, because I want you to see truly what a friend is. Let's go over to John 15. John 15. Let's look at starting at verse 10. It says, we know this is Yeshua speaking. He said, if you keep my commandments, ye shall abide in my love, even as I have kept my Father's commandments and abide in his love. These things have I spoken unto you, that my joy might remain in you, and that your joy might be full. This is my commandment, that you love one another as I have loved you. Greater love has no man than this, that a man lay down his life for his friends. Ye are my friends, if you do whatsoever I command you. Henceforth I call you not servants, for the servant knoweth not what his Lord doeth, but I have called you friends. For all things that I have heard of my Father I have made known unto you. You have not chosen me, but I have chosen you and ordained you, that ye should go and bring forth fruit, and that your fruit should remain, that whatsoever ye shall ask of the Father in my name, he shall give it to you. These things I command you, that ye love one another. So what did Yeshua say about friends?
You are my friends if you do whatever I command you.
You're my friends if you do what I command you. So we know that Abraham, being called a friend of God, friend of Yahweh, he did what was commanded of him, did he not?
Right.
But again, I'm kind of glad that the Lord always, when he writes about these, or had his people, his prophets and so on, Moses and different ones, write about these people, but he didn't just write about the good things.
Mm-hmm.
You know that?
Mm-hmm.
I'm glad that he didn't, because sometimes I get to thinking, Lord, how could we ever measure up to some of these people in your word? How can we measure up to this? But we know that they made mistakes too, did they not?
Yeah.
Let's go on over then to Genesis chapter 12. I just wanted you to see a little bit about Abraham before we actually got into the Torah portion. But this man was a great man of faith. Lech L'Cha, get yourself. We know that Jehovah was telling Abraham that he was to leave, basically to leave his country, to leave his kindred, his family, and then he was to leave his father's house, and he was going to go into a land. He wanted him to go into a land that he was going to show him. And we know about the promises. We'll kind of read about that in a minute. But I just want you to think about that. I was thinking about what Yahweh was actually asking of Abraham here. And I think that what he was asking Abraham, basically, he's asking all of us. I want you to think about that for just a minute. And tell me what you think about that. I want you to leave your kindred. I want you to leave your country. I want you to leave everything that you've known back here. And I want you to go out and I want you to start afresh. I want you to begin a new walk. This is what he was telling him. I want you to begin anew.
Yeah, for me, this goes way back. I mean, it goes from where I come from. I can even go there to see where the Father brought me a mighty long way from there. And now I find myself here, but even even it goes even more than that. It just having to move away from what I was raised in, that religious sort of system, Catholicism, to have me move into something else, to have me to now move somewhere, and just the process of coming out of this and coming out of that, having that time within all that mattered, but just the process of coming out of certain things to where I'm at now, and where you find yourself that you are, sometimes you feel alone because your father and your mother and your sisters and your brother are not moving in the way the way that you're going. They're somewhere else, still bound to a religious system. And so you see that come out of her. I've got something I need for you to do. I've got somewhere for you to go. And I remember hearing something that someone said one time, and I know it was meant to stick with me. It was, my comprehension is not a prerequisite for my cooperation. I may not understand what he's doing. I need to cooperate when he tells me to move.
Absolutely.
So it's,
and you
yeah.
spoke about the process, and I believe that Abraham went through that.
Yes.
We all go through that
Yes,
process that
absolutely.
you're talking about, Karina. It's a
Absolutely.
process, and it was for him also.
Yep.
And I know that it could not have been easy for him to leave everything that he knew. Of course, he was actually setting Abraham apart. He was setting him apart, just like we're all set apart when we come into this faith and we come into this understanding. We are set apart. Abraham also had to be set apart. And like I said, so much of this, when you read about it and just even thinking about Abraham and all the things that that he went through, and the times that he did, his faith did somewhat waver. But did you notice that when it seemed like when his faith wavered, it was about people. He didn't really trust people because he lived among people that were very wicked people. Think about that. Are we not living, especially the day and time that we're living in, we're living among a lot of wicked people. We don't have a lot of confidence in them because of their wickedness. And I think you can kind of see this with Abraham, especially when it came to his wife. He knew the wickedness of the people. He knew the wickedness of the land, where he was about to go. I mean, and so he didn't have a lot of confidence in that. So his faith kind of wavered a little bit because of that. And I think we all go through those places, do we not? We all go through those places. But anyways, let's just start reading here in chapter 12, and we'll read some, and then we'll just discuss, the lesson. Who doesn't mind reading? Chrissy, you want to read a little bit for me? Go ahead and just start reading, and I'll tell you when to quit.
And Yahweh had said unto Abram, Get thee out of thy country, and from thy kindred, and from thy father's house, and into a land that I will show thee. And I will make of thee a great nation, and I will bless thee, and make thy name great, and thou shalt be a blessing. And I will bless them that bless thee, and curse him that curseth thee, and in thee shall all families of the earth be blessed. So Abram departed as Yahweh had spoken unto him, and Lot went with him, and Abram was 75 years old when he departed out of Haran. And Abram took Sarai his wife, and Lot his brother's son, and all their substance that they had gathered, and the souls that they had gotten in Haran, and they went forth to go into the land of Canaan, and into the land of Canaan they came. And Abram passed through the land into the place of Sichem, unto the plain of Morah, and the Canaanite was there in the land. And Yahweh appeared unto Abram and said, Unto thy seed will I give this land. And there built he an altar unto Yahweh, who appeared unto him. And he removed from thence unto a mountain on the east of Bethel, and pitched his tent, having Bethel on the east, and Hai on the east. And there he builded an altar unto Yahweh, and called upon the name of Yahweh. And Abram journeyed, going on still toward the south.
Okay, let's just stop there for a minute. So we're seeing that, again, that he's told to leave his kindred, and he's to go from his father's house, and he's to go, and the Lord is going to make a great nation. He's going to bless him. He's going to make his name great. Has he done those things? Has he made his name great? Yes. Yes, he has. Has he not? He's made his name great. And so we have seen some of the fulfillment, but we haven't seen everything, have we? And it says that he's going to bless them, that bless him, and curse them, that curses him, and then all the families of the earth would be blessed. What is he talking about when he's talking about the families of the earth would be blessed here? Who knows what he's talking about here? How is it going to? He's talking about the Messiah here, isn't he? All the families of the earth will be blessed through the Messiah, and come to trust in Messiah. And he goes on to tell him, he says, so Abram departed as the Lord had spoken, and Lot went with him, and he was 75 years old. He took his wife, and he took, of course, some of the people that he had gathered together on the journey. And he passed through a place of Sichem into the land of Morah. That land Morah there, I believe it means teaching. So he was in a kind of like in a place where he was being taught. We all have to be taught, don't we? Ron and I was talking when we were coming here today. I was thinking about Abraham, and I was thinking about how that when we're going through those places of being taught, those are lonely places.
Yeah.
Are they not?
Yeah.
We were talking about how that you can be sitting in a congregation of many people, and you're trying to walk this narrow way. Who knows that this is a narrow way?
Yeah.
When you're keeping Torah and you're doing it according to the Word of God, it's a narrow way, isn't it? And it can be a very lonely place. We were talking about that, how there for a few years we felt very lonely, sitting in a congregation with a lot of people, but we still felt very lonely. Can you imagine what Abraham may have been feeling at this time when he had left his family and everything that he knew, and he was going into this strange place, really? And how he could have been feeling, or surely was feeling. I mean, he had some people with him, we know that. But still, this was a place of teaching. He was being taught here. Those places can get kind of rough, can't they? But then he goes on, and it says that he goes and he goes to Bethel. Well, first he builds an altar, and who knows that an altar has everything to do with authority. So we know that he built an altar unto the Lord, and he called out to the Lord. But then he went to the place of the house of the Lord here. And he called upon Yahweh, did he not? He had the Lord with him, which was the most important thing. But still, it can still be lonely. And it says that he goes on and he journeys, and he's going toward the south. And then what happens? Go ahead and read, Carissa.
And there was a famine in the land, and Abram went down into Egypt to sojourn there, for the famine was grievous in the land. And it came to pass, when he was come near to enter into Egypt, that he said unto Sarah his wife, Behold, now I know that thou art a fair woman to look upon. Therefore it shall come to pass, when the Egyptians shall see thee, that they shall say, This is his wife, and they will kill me, but they will save thee alive. Say, I pray thee, that thou art my sister, that it may be well with me for thy sake, and my soul shall live because of thee. And it came to pass that when Abram was come into Egypt, the Egyptians beheld a woman that was very fair. The princes also of Pharaoh saw her and commanded her before Pharaoh, and the woman was taken into Pharaoh's house. And he entreated Abram well for her sake, and he had sheep and oxen, and he had donkeys, and men servants, and maidservants, and she-donkeys, and camels. And Yahweh plagued Pharaoh and his house with great plagues because of Sarai, Abram's wife. And Pharaoh called Abram and said, What is this that thou hast done unto me? Why didst not thou tell me that she was thy wife? Why say thou she is my sister? So I might have taken her to me to wife. Now therefore, behold, thy wife, take her and go thy way. And Pharaoh commanded his men concerning him, and they went, and they sent him away, and his wife, and all that he had.
Okay, so we're seeing that there was a famine in the land, and so we see Abram going into Egypt, which really at that time was a place of refuge, was it not? What do you think about this? Has anybody really thought this thing over? Was this a good thing that he did? Was he trusting the Lord when he did this? What are your thoughts on this?
Well, it doesn't say anywhere where Yahweh told him to go to Egypt.
No, it doesn't tell you that.
It does say he called on the name of Yahweh, but he never says that Yahweh said, this is what I want you to do. It just says, and Abram set out, continuing toward the south. So.
Don't you think it had to be done?
The
It was
what?
prophetic. I mean,
Yeah,
his
yeah.
people were going to go into captivity.
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah, it's prophetic. It's a prophecy basically of Israel, and
Yeah.
it's going to happen.
It's an awesome thing.
And he was right, by the way. Those people did respond the way he thought they were going to
Exactly.
respond.
And that's what when I was talking before about that he didn't have a lot of confidence. He knew
Right.
he kind of knew the people that was around him. Well, he actually knew his own family were idolaters.
Yeah.
So I'm sure he knew that, but he also, I'm sure by this time he knew kind of things that was going on around him. We all
He was
can kind of see
protecting
it.
his wife.
Yes. I'm going to read you something out of the book of Jasher here in just a minute about this. But when I was reading this, I was thinking, Lord, we see this as a prophetic picture of Israel. And Ron and I have been talking a whole lot this week in our Bible studies about shadow pictures in the Old Testament. And this is like a shadow picture of what Israel was going to go through when they came out. What they suffered here, what went on here is like a shadow picture of what Israel was going to suffer when they came out of the land of Egypt after being there for many years. But in the book of Jasher, it says, and when the officers of the king beheld Sarai, they were struck with admiration at her beauty, and all the princes and servants of Pharaoh assembled to see Sarai, for she was very beautiful. And the king's officers ran and told Pharaoh all that they had seen, and they praised Sarai to the king, and Pharaoh ordered her to be brought, and the woman came before the king. And Pharaoh beheld Sarai, and she pleased him exceedingly, and he was struck with her beauty. And the king rejoiced greatly on her account, and made presents to those who brought him the tidings concerning her. And the woman was then brought to Pharaoh's house, and Abram grieved on account of his wife, and he prayed to the Lord to deliver her from the hands of Pharaoh. And Sarah also prayed at that time and said, O Lord God, thou didst tell my lord Abram to go from this land and from his father's house to the land of Canaan. And thou didst promise to do well with him if he would perform thy commands. Now behold, we have done that which thou didst command us, and we left our land and our families, and we went to a strange land and to a people whom we have not known before. And we came to this land to avoid the famine. And this evil accident has befallen me. Now therefore, O Lord God, deliver us and save us from the hand of this oppressor, and do well with me for the sake of thy mercy. And the Lord hearkened to the voice of Sarai, and the Lord sent an angel to deliver Sarai from the power of Pharaoh. And the king came and sat before Sarai, and beheld an angel of the Lord was standing over them. And he appeared to Sarai and said to her, Do not fear, for the Lord has heard thy prayer. And the king approached Sarai and said to her, What is that man to thee who brought thee thither? And she said, He is my brother. And the king said, It is incumbent upon us to make him great, to elevate him, and to do unto him all the good which thou shalt command us. And at the time the king sent to Abram silver and gold and precious stones in abundance, together with cattle, men, servants, and maidservants. And the king ordered Abram to be brought, and he sat in the court of the king's house, and the king greatly exalted Abram on that night. And the king approached to speak to Sarai, and he reached out his hand to touch her, when the angel smote him heavily. And he was terrified, and he refrained from reaching to her. And when the king came near to Sarai, the angel smote him to the ground, and acted thus to him the whole night, and the king was terrified. And the angel on that night smote heavily on the servants of the king and his whole household on account of Sarai. And there was a great lamentation that night amongst the people of Pharaoh's house. And Pharaoh, seeing the evil that befell him, said, Surely on account of this woman has this thing happened to me. And he removed himself at some distance from her and spoke pleasingly words to her. And the king said to Sarai, Tell me, I pray thee, concerning the man with whom thou camest here. And Sarai said, This man is my husband. And I said to thee that he was my brother, for I was afraid, lest thou shouldest put him to death through wickedness. And the king kept away from Sarai, and the plagues of the angel of the Lord ceased from him and his household. And Pharaoh knew that he was smitten on account of Sarai, and the king was greatly astonished at this. I want you to think about that, what's happening here. Now, I know there's a lot of people that talk about he should have never went into Egypt. But looking at this thing, I'm seeing a couple of different things. I'm seeing that there is blessings being bestowed upon Abraham, and I'm talking about gold and silver and all the different things that is actually being bestowed upon him. And then I'm also seeing that this people, this wicked people, are actually getting to know this God that Abraham serves. I want you to think about that. And it says, And in the morning the king called for Abram and said to him, What is this that thou hast done to me? Why didst thou say, She is my sister, owing to which I took her unto me for a wife? And this heavy plague has therefore come upon me and my household. Now therefore, here is thy wife, take her and go from our land, lest we all die on her account. And Pharaoh took more cattle, men servants, maid servants, silver, gold, to give to Abram, and he returned his Sarai to his wife. And of course it goes on to tell us that the king also took a maiden whom he begat by his concubines, and he gave her to Sarai for a handmaid. We
Yeah.
know that's where Hagar came from.
Yeah, that wasn't good.
But do you see, though, that sometimes if it wasn't a good thing, which in a sense it wasn't a good thing, that God can make all things good, come out of bad situations,
Yeah.
all things work together for the good to them that love him.
And I see Sarai functioning as, I couldn't help but think of, she's functioning as a wife should. She's praying and I mean, that's...
And she's reminding him, is she not?
Yeah, she is. She's reminding him, we've done everything. This is what you've told us to do. We've done everything, and now this has come upon us. And she's definitely helping the situation by functioning in her role.
Well, they were praying together.
Right,
it looks like.
right,
And
right.
we know Abraham had to have been praying.
Oh,
They were
absolutely,
praying
yeah.
together,
Yeah.
which is what they should have been doing, I believe
Yeah.
that. And we see that he answered prayer, did he not?
Mhm.
But out of this bad situation, something good came out of it. And like I said, I believe that these people had to have seen the hand of Jehovah here. Think about that.
Yeah.
The God that Abraham served.
Yeah.
Okay, let's just go ahead and just read some more, and then if you got something you want to add, just, feel free to add it. Go ahead, Marissa.
And Abram went up out of Egypt, he and his wife and all that he had, and Lot with him into the south. And Abram was very rich in cattle and silver and in gold. And he went on his journeys from the south even to Bethel, and to the place where his tent had been at the beginning, between Bethel and Hai, and to the place of the altar which he had made there at the first. And there Abram called on the name of Yahweh.
Almost seems like that he kind of started over again, didn't he? Went back to that house of God and he started over. How many times do we kind of have to do that? I feel like I've had to do that many times. Here I am again, Lord. Here I am. Okay, go ahead, Carissa.
And Lot also went with Abram. He had flocks and herds and tents. And the land was not able to bear them, that they might dwell together, for their substance was great, so that they could not dwell together. And there was a strife between the herdmen of Abram's cattle and the herdmen of Lot's cattle, and the Canaanite and the Perizzite dwelled then in the land. And Abram said unto Lot, Let there be no strife, I pray thee, between me and thee, and between my herdmen and thy herdmen, for we be brethren. Is not the whole land before thee? Separate thyself, I pray thee, from me. If thou wilt take the left hand, then I will go to the right. And if thou depart to the right hand, then I will go to the left.
Okay, I want to stop there for just a minute. When I was reading about this, my understanding is that what was happening here, there was actually strife between the herdsmen, but it also began to work between Lot and Abram, because Lot was letting his herdsmen go into the land of the people that lived there, which that was not supposed to be. Abram didn't let his herdsmen do that. They were told not to go into the people of the land that lived there. His cattle was not to go into that land, but Lot was allowing it. And so the people of the land was coming and complaining to Abram about it. And so Abram would go to Lot and say, this is not a good thing. You're really you're being a stumbling block here. The people were looking at me in a bad way. Don't do this. Don't do this to me. And yet he would not tell his herdsmen to stop it. So there was strife there.
Why did Abram bring Lot in the first place? Anybody know?
Someone needs to be saved out of Sodom and Gomorrah.
Yeah, because I mean, he's supposed to leave his relatives, and here comes Lot. Just wondered.
I don't know why that he brought Lot along. Sometimes those situations can get us in trouble. When we want to hold on to, even though the Bible does talk about his righteous soul, I wonder about that sometimes when it talks about Lot's righteous soul. What do you think about that, Dale? When it mentions Lot's righteous soul, when he actually vexed him, he was vexed continually because of the people of Sodom. His righteous soul was vexed because of the people of Sodom. I don't know exactly where that is. I know it's in there somewhere. Does somebody want to look that up if you've got your things with you? And it makes me wonder about that.
Although it was funny that he moved to the city so quickly. You know, he was a man of the plains with herds, and then all of a sudden, when he moved into the valley of Jordan, he decided to go live in the city.
Yeah.
You know, it's like giving up farming. I'm not sure.
Be careful where you pitch your tent.
Well, he let his eyes deceive him, didn't he? Really, he did. He looked out and he seen how that the plain, it was good, it looked good to him. And that's the way he kind of followed after what he saw.
And then he did it again. It's like,
Yes.
oh, the city looks good to me. You know,
Yes. Even after, you know, when you read about this, even after that he was rescued, you know, when the kings carried him off, he actually went back, even then. And with all of that was going on, and when you read, I mean, if this book is right on all of the history, that it talks about the abominations and the things that went on in Sodom and Gomorrah and a lot of these cities, it was horrible. You wonder why that he would want to be a part of any of this. Not that he was maybe doing it himself, but he was in the midst of all of this, and it makes you wonder why he would want to be a part of this. You know,
Prosperity.
is that what it is, Kelly?
That's what I believe it is. I mean, if we look at this point, he looked and saw with his eyes
Right.
the plan and went and chose that for himself. And if you notice that when he made that decision, he was going east, and to the west was the house Bethel and Moriah. So he was going away from the house of God
Yes,
and
he
teaching
was.
and towards something that looked pleasant to his eyes.
Right.
And that, I believe, is what, that prosperity is what took him from the valley into the cities. He was trying to make a better life for himself by himself.
In question to what Karina was asking before about why was Lot taken, I don't know, I just did a real quick search here, and the word, his name Lot means covering. I never knew that, so it's maybe an interesting thought about why Abraham took Lot. It means covering.
Yeah, that's something to think about. But again, we see that he chose the plains of Jordan, and he journeyed east, and they separated themselves. And like you said, he was actually going away from the Lord. And think about the blessings that he had when he was with Abraham. He had blessings with Abraham. He could have, if he would just did what Abraham told him to do, then maybe they could have worked something out. But no, he did not. So he journeyed away and trying, like he said, maybe to get his own prosperity, doing it his own way. You know what I'm saying?
Why would he let his cattle feed in the fields of the inhabitants of the land? For prosperity, to fatten them up. It's like we're seeing Abram being led by the Ruach HaKodesh, and we're seeing Lot being led by the Nefesh.
Yes.
Yeah, really. Well, and it's really symbolic of the struggle that's within each and every one of us
Absolutely.
too.
I mean, even as a parent, you have a child that you're like, don't go there.
Yeah.
I read somewhere today, either in the Torah or in Joshua,
Yeah.
that there was not enough room
Right.
in the lands that they had for everyone's herds to graze. And that's why Lot, we can go over here, and each one of his herds needs to go there. I don't know. I think I read that.
It was just getting a little too
It was getting too
crowded.
Right.
Too crowded.
Yeah.
Too crowded.
Yeah.
Okay, you can go ahead and read, Chris.
The thing about Lot's soul being like vexed is in 2 Peter.
What does it say? Did you find it?
It says, "And turning the cities of Sodom and Gomorrah into ashes, condemned them with an overflow, making them an example unto those that after should live sinfully, and delivered just Lot, vexed with the filthy conversation of the wicked. For this righteous man dwelling among them, and seeing and hearing, vexed his righteous soul from day to day with their unlawful deeds."
So it just seems like, it talks about him being a righteous man with a righteous soul. But yet, it's like you said, Kelly, I guess it was still flesh that he was dealing with. The spirit and the flesh,
Yeah.
he was
and
dealing with.
Mine said, having reduced to ashes the cities of Sodom and Gomorrah, condemned them to destruction, having made them an example of those who afterward would live wickedly, and rescued righteous Lot, who was oppressed with the indecent behavior of the lawless. For day after day, that righteous man dwelling among them tortured his righteous being by seeing and hearing their lawless works. So he was. That's interesting.
And it's so hard to understand that. Why would he have stayed there in a place like that?
Yeah.
And then even go back when he was actually rescued. He was rescued and go back.
He had to.
Had to.
Because even that is symbolic for us in our lives of how, God will rescue us out of bad situations, that He has mercy. And he could have, Lot could have easily been destroyed with the rest of the city.
Oh, yes, most definitely.
But God gave him an opportunity.
Yes,
Because of Abram,
yes.
not because of Lot.
The God with faith and works.
Right, because
The prayers of a righteous man.
availeth much. Because, verse 19 of 19, look, please, your servant has found, he's not saying if your servant, he says, look, please, your servant has found favor in your eyes, and you have increased your loving commitment, which you have shown me by saving my life, but I'm unable to escape to the mountains lest calamity overtake me and die. Look, please, the city. Now he's telling him, I want to go here. And the angel pretty much, the messenger says, look, please, the city is near enough to flee to, and it's small. Please let me escape there. It's not a small matter, and lest my life be saved. And he said to him, look, I have favored you concerning this matter also, without overthrowing the city for which you have spoken. Hurry, escape there, for I'm not able to do any deed until you arrive there, because of what was said to Abram. It has nothing to do with Lot. It's because what Jehovah had done for Abram's sake. This is what he's doing.
Wow. Okay.
And Lot lifted up his eyes and beheld all the plain of Jordan, that it was well watered everywhere before Yahweh destroyed Sodom and Gomorrah, even as the garden of Yahweh, like the land of Egypt, as thou comest unto Zoar. Then Lot chose him all the plain of Jordan, and Lot journeyed east, and they separated themselves the one from the other. Abram dwelled in the land of Canaan, and Lot dwelled in the cities of the plain, and pitched his tent toward Sodom. But the men of Sodom were wicked and sinners before Yahweh exceedingly. And Yahweh said unto Abram, after that Lot was separated from him, lift up now thine eyes, and look from the place where thou art northward, and southward, and eastward, and westward. For all of the land which thou seest, to thee will I give it, and to thy seed forever. And I will make thy seed as the dust of the earth, so that if a man can number the dust of the earth, then shall thy seed also be numbered. Arise, walk through the land in the length of it and in the breadth of it, for I will give it unto thee. Then Abram removed his tent and came and dwelt in the plain of Mamre, which is in Hebron, and built there an altar unto Yahweh.
Okay. So what do you think about him telling him to walk through the land like that?
Oh, statement is clean on land. It's like a legal thing. I think I heard Rico talking about that. How you would walk the length, if you walk the length of it, you were claiming it.
Claiming it.
And then in Joshua, that's what Yahweh tells him to do. If, every place that your feet walks on, I will give to you.
Right.
It's yours.
Yeah. I got real tickled. I was listening to Rico a couple days ago. He can be funny sometimes, and he was talking about coming into covenant with people. Of course, he always gets on these prosperity preachers because he's dealt with the situation, And he was talking about how that when they begin to tell you, you know, you send your $1,000 in or whatever, and because I'm in covenant with you. I'm in covenant with you. He said, you know, a covenant is a two-way thing, and it is. And he said, what you need to do then is tell them, look, you know, I may have a $20,000 bill that needs to be paid. I'll send my $1,000 into you, and you pay my $20,000 bill off. He said they're not going to want to be in covenant with you for very long. But I thought that was good. I thought that was a good illustration because it is. It is. You know, it's two. It takes two. You know, to make a covenant. And I thought that was pretty good. He can come up with some funny things sometimes. Okay. Now, this is where we go into the 14th chapter, and it talks about the battle of these kings. But I don't want to kind of go over all that right now, because most of us has probably read it, but I want to jump over to 14 and 12, where it goes on and talks about the capture and rescue a lot. We can kind of read through that a little bit, and then we'll go on over. But it says, and I'll read some of that. It says in 12, it says, and they took Lot, Abram's brother's son, who dwelled in Sodom, and his goods, and departed. There came one that had escaped and told Abram the Hebrew. Did you notice he's called a Hebrew here? Abram is called a Hebrew. And we know that he's actually called the first Hebrew because he crossed over. And I had actually noted this here, that it also, in that word Hebrew, crossed over, there's a root word that means to be set apart also, to be set apart. Makes sense, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and it says, for he dwelt in the plain of Mamre, the Amorite, brother of Eshcol, and brother of Aner, and there was a confederate with Abram. And when Abram heard that his brother was taken captive, he armed his trained servants born in his own house, 318, and pursued them out unto Dan. And he divided himself against them, he and his servants, by night, and smote them, and pursued them into Hobah, which is on the left hand of Damascus. And he brought back all the goods, and he also brought again his brother Lot and his goods, and the women also and the people. And the king of Sodom went out to meet him after his return from the slaughter of Kedorlaomer and of the kings that were with him in the valley of Sheba, which is the king's dale. And Melchizedek, king of Salem, brought forth bread and wine, and he was the priest of the Most High God. And he blessed him and said, Blessed be Abram of the Most High God, possessor of heaven and earth. And blessed be the Most High God, which hath delivered thine enemies into the hand. And he gave him tithes of all. And the king of Solomon said unto Abram, Give me the persons, and take the goods to thyself. And Abram said to the king of Sodom, I have lifted up mine hand unto the Lord, the Most High God, the possessor of heaven and earth, that I will not take from a thread even to a shoe latchet, and that I will not take anything that is thine, lest thou shouldest say, I have made Abram rich. Save only that which the young men have eaten in the portion of the men which went with me, Aner and Eshcol and Mamre, let them take their portion. So we're seeing here that Melchizedek, being the king of Salem, it says here, bringing forth bread and wine. It sounds like covenant. That's talking about covenant, a covenant meal, isn't it? He
Right.
came into covenant. And Abram paid tithes to this man. Now, I know in this book of Jasher, they believe that he is actually Shem. Now, I don't know that.
That's what I've heard too.
I don't know that. You know, that's something that I don't know. You know,
Is he being ordained into the Melchizedek's priesthood there?
Well, I tend to think so. I tend to think that he was a high priest, and I think that was being transferred over to Abraham or Abram at this time, because I think like Rico explained. I think was it Rico that explained it, that for him to have offered up his son Isaac, he had to have been a high priest for him to offer up that sacrifice.
Oh,
Do you
good
see what I'm
point.
saying there?
Yeah.
So it does sound like that this was a transferring of that priesthood. So it makes sense, really. Kelly, what was you going to say?
The belief that it was Shem and the assumption based on the lack of understanding that we have. I mean, I believe it's Yeshua.
Do you think it is?
Melchizedek, king of righteousness, king of Salem, the king of righteousness, king of peace. He is the only one that I know that matches that description.
Well, I know that Rico was talking about how that when you go back to Hebrews, it mentions about not having a father or not a mother or something. I can't remember exactly what the scripture is in the Hebrew there. But he claimed that that was actually talking about how that the Aaronic priesthood, that they have, that you can only be a high priest if you were part of that family. But this priesthood, it isn't about, one dying and then the next one coming about to be the high priest. So it isn't about, that's not what it's about, basically. That you don't have to be from the Aaronic family. You understand what I'm saying? So I don't know. That is one of those things. Ron and I talked about some things. We've been studying the Bible together, and there's some things in there that you just don't know. You just don't know. And I think that's one of those things. I know there's a lot of people that do believe that's Yeshua. They do believe that. Some believe it's Shem. Then I don't know about what other people believe. That one, I don't know.
Interesting though, because Joshua also says that before Abraham, he actually stood out and was taught by
Yes.
Noah and Shem.
Yeah.
I found that very, very telling.
Yeah.
It's really interesting. Kind of tells you how Abraham could be, he's already set apart. He's already learning God's ways. No
Yeah.
longer
Right.
he recognized idolatry when he saw it.
Exactly, yeah.
I don't know, I think it makes sense.
And one of the things too that he wouldn't take anything from all that was gotten back in this battle. He wouldn't take anything from these kings because Jehovah is his king. And he wasn't going to let them say, Abraham became a great man because of them. He's saying he's going to bless me, which we know that he did. And he has his own ways of doing that sometime, but he wasn't about to let them have that say, was he? It was because of them giving to him. He was trusting in the one true God. Okay, you want to go ahead and start reading in 15?
After these things, the word of Yahweh came unto Abram in a vision, saying, Fear not, Abram, I am thy shield and thy exceeding great reward. And Abram said, My sovereign Yahweh, what wilt thou give me, seeing I go childless, and the steward of my house is this Eleazar of Damascus? And Abram said, Behold, to me thou hast given no seed, and lo, one born in my house is mine heir. And behold, the word of Yahweh came unto him, saying, This shall not be thine heir, but he that shall come forth out of thine own bowels shall be thine heir. And he brought him forth abroad, and said, Look now toward heaven, and tell the stars, if thou be able to number them. And he said unto him, So shall thy seed be. And he believed in Yahweh, and he counted it to him for righteousness. And he said unto him, I am Yahweh that brought thee out of Ur of the Chaldees, to give thee this land to inherit it. And he said, My sovereign Yahweh, whereby shall I know that I shall inherit it? And he said unto him, Take thee an heifer of 3 years old, and a she-goat of 3 years old, and a ram of 3 years old, and a turtle dove, and a young pigeon. And he took unto him all of these, and divided them in the midst, and laid each piece one against another, but the birds divided he not. And when the fowls came down upon the carcass, Abram drove them away. And when the sun was going down, a deep sleep fell upon Abram, and lo, a core of great darkness fell upon him. And he said unto Abram, Know of a surety that thy seed shall be a stranger in the land that is not theirs, and shall serve them, and they shall afflict them 400 years. And also that nation whom they shall serve will I judge, and afterward shall they come out with great substance. And thou shalt go to thy fathers in peace, thou shalt be buried in a good old age. But in the 4th generation they shall come hither again, for the iniquity of the Amorites is not yet full. And it came to pass that when the sun went down and it was dark, behold, a smoking furnace and a burning lamp that passed between those pieces. And the same day Yahweh made a covenant with Abram, saying, Unto thy seed have I given this land, from the river of Egypt unto the great river, the river Euphrates. The Canaanites and the Kenizzites and the Kadmonites and the Hittites and the Perizzites and the Rephaim, and the Amorites, and the Canaanites, and the Girgashites, and the Jebusites.
Okay, so we're seeing that this covenant is being ratified here. And what's going on here, though? We see he's telling them to take the animals and to cut the animals down the middle, wasn't it? Take the animals, and he took them and he divided them in the midst and laid them a piece one against another, but the birds he did not. And he said, when the fowls came down upon the carcasses, we know Abram drove them away, but when the sun was going down, a deep sleep fell upon Abram. And we know that it actually takes two to make this covenant, but what's happened here? It doesn't tell us that Abram walks through the pieces, does it?
No.
It tells us
Made
that
on his behalf. It's an unconditional covenant.
an unconditional covenant. As a matter of fact, it tells us the word of the Lord, which is the Memra, the word of the Lord, had come to him. And actually, this walk through this burning lamp that passed between actually went through these pieces. And as the one brother said, do you understand now why the Messiah had to die? What is actually what's being done here? He's saying this covenant, when you enter into a covenant, you have to keep the covenant. It's a life and death situation. If you don't keep the covenant, it's death to you.
That's conditional.
Yeah, that's conditional. If you don't keep the covenant, if you don't keep the commandments or the covenant, then you die.
Right.
Well, he's basically saying, Abraham, if you don't, or your people, your children, doesn't keep the covenant, they die.
Mm-hmm.
But Abraham didn't walk through the pieces, did he?
No.
No. So what's the Lord saying to him then? What is he saying to him here? If you don't keep the covenant, I die. He didn't say, you die, Abraham. He says, I die. Which is why the Messiah had to die. Because his people did not keep the covenant. The children of Abraham did not keep the covenant. So that's the reason the Messiah had to die. That's something. When you think about that, he took both sides of that covenant, not just the one, but Abraham's also. And saying if they don't keep the covenant, then I die.
Right, he witnessed that covenant himself. And for those people who don't believe that Yeshua is God, that is one of the confirming scriptures right there.
Yes.
And the fact that he
The Word of God,
Yeah.
the Word that was made flesh. We
Right.
see that, the Word that was made flesh, the Memra, the Word. It tells us here that
Right.
the Word of the Lord came to Abram
Right.
in a vision, saying, fear not. And he walked through the pieces. And this is why the Messiah has had to die.
Right.
Because we know that the children of Israel did not keep the covenant, did they? They broke the covenant. Again, they did it at Mount Sinai. They did the same thing. And that's why the Messiah died. To renew that covenant. And we are a part of that. In our faith. And through our faith, we are children of Abraham, so we are part of that. Do we all understand that? Do we all understand the covenant? I think for so long that, going to a traditional Christian church for, many, many years, you don't, unless, a lot of times we don't understand covenants. I don't think they're really taught a lot of times. I'm not saying that they all don't teach it, but there's a lot of them that do not teach covenant. They know, a lot of them believe that the Messiah is the Messiah and he came to save the world, but they don't understand why that he had to die. Well, this here is why he had to die. Okay. Do you want to go on? We're going into chapter 16, or have you had enough? We've been at it for about 45 minutes. Maybe a little bit longer than that. It's up to you all.
Up to you.
Okay, we'll just go maybe just a little bit longer. Krista, go ahead and start at 16.
Now Sarai, Abram's wife, bare him no children, and she had a handmaiden of an Egyptian whose name was Hagar. And Sarai said unto Abram, Behold, now Yahweh hath restrained me from bearing. I pray thee, go in unto my maid. It may be that I may obtain children by her. And Abram hearkened to the voice of Sarai. And Sarai, Abram's wife, took Hagar, her maid, the Egyptian, after Abram had dwelt 10 years in the land of Canaan, and gave her to her husband Abram to be his wife. And he went in unto Hagar, and she conceived. And when she saw that she had conceived, her mistress was despised in her eyes. And Sarai said unto Abram, My wrong be upon me. I have given my maid into thy bosom. And when she saw that she had conceived, I was despised in her eyes. Yahweh judge between me and thee. But Abram said unto Sarai, Behold, thy maid is in thine hand. Do to her as it pleaseth thee. And when Sarai dealt hardly with her, she fled from her face. And the angel of Yahweh found her by a fountain of water in the wilderness, by the fountain in the way of Shur. And he said, Hagar, Sarai's maid, whence camest thou? And whither wilt thou go? And she said, I flee from the face of my mistress Sarai. And the angel of Yahweh said unto her, Return to thy mistress, and submit thyself into her hand. And the angel of Yahweh said unto her, I will multiply thy seed exceedingly, that it shall not be numbered for multitude. And the angel of Yahweh said unto her, Behold, thou art with a child, and shalt bear a son, and shalt call his name Ishmael, because Yahweh hath heard thy affliction. And he will be a rod man, his hand will be against every man, and every man's hand against him, and he shall dwell in the presence of all of his brethren. And she called the name of Yahweh that spake unto her, Thou seest me, for she said, Have I also here looked after him that seeth me? Wherefore the well was called Beer-lahai. Behold, it is between Kadesh and Pered. And Hagar bare Abram a son, and Abram called his son's name, which Hagar bare, Ishmael. And Abram was 86 years old when Hagar bare Ishmael to Abram.
He was 86 years old when Ishmael was born. It didn't take Sarai very long to realize the mistake that she had made, did it? According to the book of Jasher, it's basically saying that when Hagar seen that she conceived, that she felt herself better than her mistress, because God answered and she conceived and gave Abram a son and used her, because she must be better than Sarai. Mm-hmm. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, Sarai also actually kind of got on to Abram and accused him of not praying for her, if I remember right. I think she said, why didn't you pray for me? You know, that the Lord would bless me, that I could, conceive seed. But it started a whole lot of problems, didn't it? It started a whole lot. Just quickly in the 17, we can see that when Abram was 90 years old, and it says he was 99 here, that again we see that the Lord comes again to him, and he begins to tell him to walk before me and be thou perfect. And my understanding, when he was telling him to walk perfect, he was telling him to walk upright and mature. He was to be mature. As believers, that's what we need to do, don't we? And we know that he was a follower. One of the things that it mentioned about Abraham, it says that he was a man that had all the sides of his tent, the 4 sides of his tent opened. That those that would come to him, he was very hospitable to them. He would give them whatever they needed, food and water, but he also would teach them the word. And I thought that was a good thing. I'm going to kind of stop here, but like I said, so many things that we can read about Abraham, that we see that he was a man of faith and he loved the Lord, he was a friend of God, and we can just learn so many things, can't we, from him. I want to be the type of person that is willing to teach. I was thinking about what Rico was talking. I think it was Rico that, I've listened to different ones. I think it was Rico was talking about that it's not always the thing to do. When you begin to walk this walk to get out and just start telling everybody about it. Was it him, Kimberly, did he say that, where he says it's better just to walk it out, and then as you walk it out, people begin to notice it, and then they will come to you and they will question you. And I think that's a better situation there. That way we know we're not casting our pearl before swine.
Right.
and that when the questions come, then we can answer. But I think that's wisdom. I think it's wisdom, and I think this is what this man did. I think he walked his faith out, and when he had the opportunity, he shared that faith.